At the church doors, her dog refused to move. Minutes later, the truth left the bride in tears. The bells of St. Helena's Chapel rang like a promise over the small Vermont town. White clapboard houses, maple trees, and the sharp blue of an autumn sky. It should have been the safest place in the world. Rachel Monroe stood just outside the chapel doors, wrapped in lace and light. Her wedding gown spilled around her like a cloud. Her hands shook around the bouquet of white peonies. Through the cracked doors she could hear the soft swell of the organ, the murmur of guests settling into pews, the faint rustle of programs. This was the moment every little girl in her hometown dreamed about. The aisle, the vows, the kiss. She told herself to breathe. Her father stood at her side in his best suit, tied just slightly crooked. His eyes glistened. He squeezed her arm. "Ready, Rach?" She nodded. Or she thought she did. Her throat felt tight. Her smile came out small and shaky. "I am, I think." Behind them, the gravel parking lot was full of cars and laughter. Bridesmaids in dusty blue dresses finished adjusting each other's hair. Her mother fussed with the back of the veil one more time. The photographer hovered, firing off a last shot of Rachel framed by the white doors and the chapel's old stone steps. The wind shifted. A sound cut through the noise. Nails on gravel, a low bark. Rachel's heart stumbled. It could not be. She turned just as a tan and black shape blurred between parked cars, weaving through legs and hems and dropped jaws. Chase. The German shepherd ran straight toward her, ears pinned, chest low, tail stiff. No goofy tongue, no playful hop. His whole body was a single line of intent. Someone yelped. Another guest swore under their breath. A kid whispered, "Is that a police dog?" Rachel stepped forward without thinking, bouquet dipping. She had not seen him since that morning, pacing by the front door, whining when she left for the salon. "Chase, what are you doing here?" He did not slow down until he reached the bottom of the chapel steps. Then he stopped so abruptly gravel kicked up under his paws. He looked up at her, eyes bright, breathing hard, chest heaving. For one hopeful second she thought he might wag his tail. He did not. A growl started deep in his throat. Her father tightened his grip on her arm. "Easy there, boy," he said, voice light but edged. Where did he even get out from? Her mother hurried forward, heels wobbling on the stone. "Rachel, stay back." He looks riled up, but Rachel shook her head. This was Chase, the dog who slept at her bedroom door. The dog who once braced his body against a cabin door in the middle of a whiteout, barking until she woke up and smelled the gas leak. The dog who had dragged her by the jacket sleeve when she slipped on ice near the river last winter. He had saved her before, in ways no one else fully believed. She moved down one step, lace whispering over the stone. "Hey, buddy," she said softly. "It is me. It is okay." Chase stepped up to meet her. His nose brushed the fabric of her dress, sniffing both sides as if checking for something she could not see. The growl faded for a heartbeat. His eyes met hers. There was no madness there, only a heavy, watchful worry. Then he looked past her. Rachel felt the change before she saw who he was looking at. The growl came back, low and sharper. Chase's head turned toward the open doors of the chapel, toward the aisle, toward the man waiting at the other end. Evan Hartman. Inside, Rachel could just glimpse him under the arch of white flowers. Dark suit, neat tie, hands folded in front of him. The picture of a groom. He shifted his weight, talking with the pastor, not yet aware of the storm at the doors. Chase did not blink. Rachel swallowed. Her bridesmaid Lily leaned in behind her, whispering, "Why is he looking at Evan like that? I do not know." Chase took a step up, then another. He planted himself squarely in front of the chapel doors, blocking the entrance. Muscles tight, ears forward, tail straight. He let out a growl that rolled across the stone like distant thunder. Guests near the back pews turned towards the sound. A hush moved through the chapel, one row at a time. The wedding planner rushed over, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "Whose dog is this? We cannot have an animal at the entrance right now." Rachel opened her mouth, closed it, then forced the words out. "He is mine. His name is Chase." The planner stared at her like she had just announced a bomb threat. "Well, he cannot stay here. We are about to start. Someone get him to the side." A groomsman reached for Chase's collar. The shepherd snapped his head around and gave a warning bark, sharp and sudden. Not a bite, not a lunge. Just enough teeth to make the man jerk his hand back with a curse. Jesus, that dog is serious. Rachel's pulse hammered in her ears. "Chase, stop. You are scaring people." He glanced at her for half a second, then went back to staring at the man at the end of the aisle, as if nothing else existed. Her father tried to laugh it off. He probably smelled the catering. Dogs get wired on days like this. "Let me move him." But when he tried to step past, Chase shifted his weight, blocking not just the doorway but Rachel herself. He placed his body between her and the darkness inside the chapel, like a guard posted at the entrance to a cave. He did not look at her father. He did not move aside. The air felt colder. Rachel tugged lightly at his fur. "Buddy, please. You are being weird." Her mother's voice dropped to a whisper behind her. "You remember the cabin, Rach? He does not act like this for no reason." Inside, the organist began to repeat the opening notes, filling time, trying to smooth over the delay. The pastor checked his watch. Evan turned toward the back of the church, a line forming in his brow. "What is going on?" From the doorway, Rachel could see that little flicker in his face. Annoyance, irritation, the crack in the perfect groom. Chase's growl deepened. Rachel's chest tightened. Her fingers dug into the bouquet. She thought of all the small things she had ignored. The late-night phone calls Evan always took in another room. The cash withdrawals. The one time Chase had refused a treat from Evan's hand and had walked away to lie at the front window, staring out into the dark. She had laughed it off then. Not today. The planner checked her watch and hissed through a smile. "We need to go, Rachel. Now. The guests are waiting. Just step over him. Step over him." She tried. She really did. She lifted the hem of her dress and placed one satin shoe on the threshold. Chase moved faster. He swung his body sideways and leaned his full weight against her legs, forcing her back a half step. Not rough, not violent, just unyielding. His chest rumbled like a warning. The crowd inside saw it. A murmur rose, a wave of confusion. Is she stuck? Is that her dog? Why is he doing that? Evan took a step down from the altar now, jaw tight. "Can someone please handle that dog?" The word came out sharper than it should have. It carried down the aisle and out the doors. Chase went still as stone. For a heartbeat, the whole world seemed to balance on that threshold. The bride, the dog, the open door, the man at the end of the aisle. Then the shepherd made his choice. He sprang forward. Not at Rachel. Not towards the pews. He launched straight into the chapel, nails skidding on the polished floor, a bark ripping out of him that made children flinch and adults grab the backs of the pews. Rachel gasped. Chase raced down the center aisle, head low, every muscle locked toward one target. Evan took one startled step back, eyes wide. Chase was not some confused pet that had slipped its leash. He was a dog that had decided something was wrong at the altar. And for the first time that day, with her bouquet trembling and the guests rising in their seats, Rachel Monroe felt a cold thread of fear cut through the white noise of happiness. Chase was not trying to ruin her wedding. He was trying to stop it. The morning of the wedding began with a silence that felt heavier than dawn should allow. Frost clung to the windows of the Monroe farmhouse. The smell of coffee, hairspray, and fresh-cut flowers drifted through the hallways. Bridesmaids padded in and out of rooms in slippers, voices soft and excited. Chase lay at the foot of Rachel's bed, eyes already open before her alarm sounded. His breathing was shallow, watchful. Every few seconds, his ears twitched at sounds no human seemed to hear. Rachel sat up slowly, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Morning, boy." Usually that word sent Chase bounding onto the mattress, tail thumping, tongue out, ready for breakfast and a run through the yard. Today he didn't move. He only watched her rise, his gaze fixed, sharp, steady. She frowned, crossing the room to kneel beside him. "You okay?" Chase pressed his nose to her hand, but the gesture felt different. It was not affection, it was inspection. Her mother knocked on the door. "Honey, time to get moving. We have the makeup artist arriving in 20 minutes. Rachel stood and reached for her robe. Behind her, Chase rose too. He followed her to the door, then down the stairs, then through the kitchen. Always one step behind, close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath against her calves. He didn't eat. His bowl sat full beside the pantry door. His nose brushed the kibble, but he turned away after a single sniff, pacing the length of the kitchen instead. Her mother noticed first. "That's strange. He never skips breakfast. Maybe he's picking up on the excitement." Rachel said, trying to sound confident, but a knot tightened in her stomach. Chase wasn't nervous. He was alert in a way she hadn't seen since the winter storm that trapped them both in that mountain cabin. Lily, her maid of honor, stepped into the kitchen holding a garment bag. "Is he jealous you're getting married?" Her tone was teasing, but her eyes stayed on Chase longer than expected. The dog paused mid-step, lifting his nose to the air again, sniffing a scent that drifted from the hallway. A car engine pulled into the driveway, tires crunching on gravel, doors slamming. The house shifted into motion. Evan had arrived. Rachel smoothed her robe and took a deep breath, unaware that Chase had frozen behind her. He stared at the front door, tail low, shoulders braced. His body leaned slightly forward, weight settling onto his front legs. A warning posture. When the door opened, Evan stepped inside holding a garment bag in one hand and a bouquet of roses in the other. "Morning, beautiful," he said, smiling at her. Rachel smiled back. But before she could take a step forward, Chase moved. He planted himself between them, chest forward, issuing a low growl that rumbled like a motor warming in the cold. Evan stopped mid-stride. "Whoa, easy, Chase, it's me." The growl deepened. Lily blinked. "He doesn't usually act like that around you, does he?" Rachel shook her head slowly. "No, he never does." Evan tried to laugh it off. "Guess the big guy knows he is losing his girl today." Her mother tried to brush past Chase to greet Evan, but Chase shifted sideways, blocking her too. His gaze never left the groom. Rachel knelt beside him. "Buddy, come on. You're being ridiculous." She reached to guide him back by the collar. His neck stiffened beneath her hand. His muscles held tight, vibrating with tension. Then Rachel saw it. The moment everything changed. Chase's nose lifted. His nostrils flared. He took one sharp breath towards the sleeve of Evan's jacket, and something inside him snapped awake. A bark tore out of him, so loud and sudden that everyone flinched. Rachel grabbed his harness. "Chase, stop it!" But the shepherd wasn't listening. His nose brushed the jacket again. Then the pocket, his ears pinned back. He backed up a step, hackles rising, every instinct in him narrowing to a point. Rachel's mother frowned. "Evan, what's in your pocket?" Evan's smile faltered. Nothing important, just my inhaler. Chase barked again, sharper this time, pushing forward as if trying to reach that pocket. Rachel felt her mouth go dry. She remembered something she hadn't thought about in years. A week-long emergency training she volunteered for during college. Chase had been part of the canine unit that participated. Back then he was younger, freshly trained, not yet hers. They had demonstrated how dogs could identify specific chemicals used in staged gas leaks, controlled burns, even illegal compounds. The scent triggers were distinct, rare, dangerous, and one of them was sharp, medicinal, and metallic, exactly what Chase had just smelled. Her pulse sped. Why would Evan smell like that? Chase lunged again, not to attack, but to warn. His body angled toward Rachel, keeping her behind him as if he believed someone might reach for her. Evan held up his hands. Okay. He's jumpy. I'll step back. But he said it too quickly. Too rehearsed. Rachel felt something cold slide into her chest. Chase followed Rachel all morning. From the makeup chair, to the mirror, to the room where the veil was pinned in place. When she tried to close the bathroom door, he whined until she left it cracked open. He never stopped scanning the room, never stopped listening, never stopped smelling the air. By the time Rachel slipped into her gown, the house full of perfume and laughter, Chase was pacing. Tight, controlled circles, always stopping to look at the window as if expecting someone to appear. His tail stayed low, his breathing short, his eyes tracking the front door every time it opened. When the bridal car pulled up, white ribbons fluttering from the side mirrors, everyone gathered at the porch. Evan hugged Rachel quickly before getting into his own car. "See you at the church," he whispered. Chase watched him walk away. Not with jealousy, not with sadness, with suspicion. Rachel kissed Chase's head before stepping into the car. "I'll see you after the ceremony, okay?" Chase didn't move, didn't sit, didn't wag. He only stared at Evan's retreating car, then back at the dress, then at the sleeves where Rachel's skin was exposed, as if checking her one last time before something began. Rachel climbed inside, veil pooling around her. Her mother leaned through the open window. "He'll calm down once we leave." But the second the car door closed, Chase barked, a single sharp sound that made Rachel jump. The engine ignited. Chase ran alongside the car for several yards, nails scraping on pavement, barking harder now. Not panicked, not aimless, calling out, warning. Rachel pressed a hand to the glass, her throat tight. "Chase, go home. Please." But he didn't. He stood in the middle of the road as the car pulled away, chest rising and falling in quick bursts, watching her disappear around the bend. His instincts were no longer whispers. They were alarms. And by the time the car turned toward St. Helena's Chapel, Chase had already made his decision. If Rachel was walking into danger, he would not let her walk in alone. The courtyard of St. Helena's Chapel buzzed with the soft hum of wedding guests arriving. Dresses swept across the stone path. Men adjusted ties. Children chased each other between rows of parked cars. The organ inside rehearsed the opening chords again, the music drifting out into the crisp Vermont air. No one noticed the German shepherd slip around the corner of the chapel. Chase had broken from the crowd the moment Rachel stepped out of the bridal car. While the photographer fussed over her veil and guests whispered excitedly, he lowered his head to the ground and followed a scent that sliced through the perfume and fresh flowers like a blade. It was faint, wrong, and familiar. He padded past the side garden and toward the small door near the back of the church, a place guests rarely used. The wood was old, heavy, framed by a stone arch that caught morning frost. At first glance, the doorway looked untouched, but the ground told a different story. Chase stopped, nose to the dirt, one paw lifted, a footprint, But not Evan's, not Rachel's, not anyone from the bridal party. Bigger, deeper, fresher. Chase inhaled again. The smell hit him with enough force that his ears flattened. Ryan Cooper. A bark rose in his throat, but he swallowed it back, lowering himself into a crouch. He sniffed again, tracing the scent along the edge of the stone wall. The traces were sharp with sweat, stress, and something acrid underneath. Something he remembered from cramped training warehouses and sterile task rooms. The smell of adrenaline hiding behind cologne. Ryan had no reason to be at the side entrance. He wasn't staff. He wasn't part of the ceremony. He was Evan's oldest friend, but he was supposed to arrive with the groomsmen through the main doors, and he was supposed to be clean. Years ago, Ryan had been arrested for financial fraud, only to slip through with a suspended sentence and a team of lawyers that made headlines. His record was technically cleared, but his name never truly left the whispers. And Chase had met him once. That one meeting had been enough to burn the man's scent into memory. Chase growled low. Outside, the laughter continued. The church doors opened. Guests slipped inside. Chase circled the prints again. The track stopped at the side door. Someone had entered through it recently, someone trying not to be seen. Inside the chapel, the music shifted. The ceremony was minutes from starting. He pressed his nose to the wooden surface. The same scent was on the handle. Fresh. Less than an hour old. Then another scent drifted toward him, carried by a cold gust that whistled through the trees. Evan. Chase recognized the tone instantly. The same mix of nerves, sweat, cologne, and something else. Something chemical. Something he had already detected this morning. Now he smelled it again near the side entrance. Stronger. Chase's hackles rose. His body leaned forward, tensing like a drawn bow. Behind him, a voice broke the quiet. Chase. What are you doing, Rachel? Her dress brushed against the stone as she stepped carefully around the side of the chapel, bouquet held close, veil fluttering behind her. Her breath puffed in the cold air. She had slipped away from the crowd to find him after he bolted from her car. When Chase turned toward her, his chest lowered, tail stiff, as if urging her to back away. Rachel frowned and crouched slightly. Her fingers brushed his fur. What is it, boy? Chase stepped between her and the side door. He gave a single sharp bark, then looked back at the footprints. His nose hovered over the ground, then snapped up towards the door again. Rachel followed his gaze. She didn't know footprints. She didn't know scent trails. But she understood Chase, and she knew the look he wore now, the barely contained tension, the way his front legs braced, ready to shield her. She whispered his name again. Her voice trembled. Chase. Inside, the organ music paused. The crowd hushed before rising again in a slow murmur. Rachel's stomach twisted. She looked toward the side path, then toward the main entrance where families lined up with programs in hand. This is ridiculous, she told herself. It's a wedding. People come in and out from everywhere. But she couldn't shake it. That cold, creeping feeling. Chase never behaved like this unless danger was close. She knelt beside him, glancing once more at the side door. Do you think someone's inside there? Chase didn't answer with a bark. Instead, he lowered his head and sniffed again. The tension in his body grew, his ears pinned, his tail dipped. A warning posture she remembered from the winter night when a stranger wandered too close to the cabin. A familiar voice called from the main entrance. Rachel, they're ready for you. Evan, standing under the arch of flowers, smiling for the guests. But even from this distance, Rachel could see it. His jaw was too tight, his smile too stiff. He kept wiping his palms on his suit pants. Chase stiffened at the sound of his voice. His growl rose back to life in his throat, deep and resonant. Rachel turned toward Evan. He's acting weird, she called out, trying to keep her tone light. Evan laughed it off. He must smell the food for the reception. Come on, we're waiting. But Chase knew better. Rachel touched the shepherd's collar, torn between duty and instinct. The guests were seated. The music was starting. Her father was waiting to walk her down the aisle. But her dog, the one who had saved her life more than once, was telling her something was wrong. She took one hesitant step toward the main doors. Chase moved with her. But as they approached the entrance, 2 groomsmen opened the doors wider, and the warm light spilled over the floor inside. And there, standing, just behind Evan, half hidden near the altar, was someone Rachel hadn't expected to see this early. Ryan Cooper, his suit immaculate, his face pale, his eyes darting towards the side door where Chase had been searching. His hand brushed the inside of his jacket as if checking something was still there. Chase's growl exploded through the church entrance. Ryan flinched. Rachel froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Chase had found the first truth. This wasn't nerves, this wasn't jealousy, and it wasn't coincidence that Ryan Cooper had slipped into the chapel unnoticed. Something else had entered St. Helena's with the wedding guests. Something Chase wasn't going to let anywhere near her. The double doors of St. Helena's chapel swung halfway shut, leaving Rachel stranded on the threshold with Chase planted firmly in front of her. His body blocked the aisle, muscles rigid, head low. His growl reverberated through the entryway, a vibration she could feel in her bones. Guests stared. The whispers spiked again. Rachel tried to take a single step into the chapel. Chase jerked sideways, cutting her off, barking once with a warning so sharp it froze her foot mid-air. She had never seen him like this. Determined, unmoving, a wall of fur and instinct. Evan stepped forward from the altar, attempting a confused laugh that didn't reach his eyes. What is going on out there? Rachel, do you need help? His voice echoed through the pews, too controlled, too careful. The closer he walked, the more Chase's growl deepened. The shepherd's breathing quickened, his gaze locked on Evan with the intensity of a dog who had already decided something wasn't right. Rachel's pulse thudded behind her ribs. Chase, come on. Please. This is my wedding. But Chase didn't look at her. His gaze tracked Evan's every step. Behind Evan, Ryan Cooper stood stiff near the altar, shoulders tight, scanning the room. His eyes flicked once to the side door Chase had been investigating. His hand brushed the inside of his jacket again. The same move. Checking. Protecting. Hiding. Rachel felt her throat tighten. She crouched slightly, placing a trembling hand on Chase's back. His fur bristled beneath her fingers, each strand standing like a warning flag. "Buddy, what are you seeing?" He didn't answer with a bark. He shifted his stance instead, pushing his shoulder lightly into her shin, nudging her away from the aisle. Not forward, backward. It was instinctive, protective, clear. He didn't want her going in. The weight of that truth dropped into her stomach like a stone. A bridesmaid whispered behind her. Maybe he's scared of the crowd. Rachel wanted to believe it. God, she wanted to believe it. But her mind couldn't hold the lie. Not after everything Chase had done for her. She straightened slowly, hands shaking. The chapel lights blurred for a moment, the room spinning as memories slammed into her with sudden force. The first one came sharp as a blade. Her junior year of college. The tiny off-campus apartment she shared with 2 girls. A night so cold she remembered every breath hanging in the air. She had fallen asleep on the couch after studying. Chase, barely a year old then, nudged her awake, whining. She had ignored him at first, exhausted. But he wouldn't stop. He pawed at her chest, barked at the kitchen, then at the front door. She followed him, annoyed, only to feel her head swim when she stood up. The carbon monoxide detector was broken. The stove had been leaking silently for hours. Chase had dragged her outside by the sleeve of her sweatshirt when she started to collapse. He refused to leave her side until the fire department arrived. Her roommate told her later that if he hadn't acted when he did, they might never have woken up. Rachel's eyes stung. He had saved her life once, and now he was acting exactly the same. She blinked hard, pulling herself back into the present. Evan was only a few feet away now, forced smile plastered on his face, pretending nothing was wrong. The pastor had stepped down from the altar, confused but trying to maintain peace. Rachel felt Chase's body vibrate under her palm as Evan moved closer. Then another memory hit her. Quicker, sharper, late-night phone calls. Evan slipping into the hall with hushed tones, closing the bedroom door quietly behind him. The way he would come back to bed smelling faintly stressed, the lines around his mouth tight. He always said it was work. Deadlines, projects. There was always something to explain away the secrecy. Then there were the trips. Quick flights to Boston or Hartford for reasons that never added up. He never told her much, and she had loved him enough to let it go. But once, while folding laundry, she found a receipt in his jacket, a gas station near the Vermont border. Same night he claimed he was on a video call meeting. She had asked gently, and he snapped so quickly that she apologized before he did. She didn't want to remember that now. Not today. But Chase remembered everything. His instincts never forgot. And something inside her knew, painfully and clearly, that the dog wasn't reacting to nothing. Behind Evan, Ryan shifted again. His jacket rustled. Chase's head snapped to him, and the growl surged back, darker than before. Rachel swallowed the rising fear. Why are they both so tense, Evan noticed. He tried to lighten the moment. Rachel, sweetheart, he's making a scene. Let me bring him outside. We can settle him down. He reached out a hand toward Chase. Chase barked so loudly the stained glass windows seemed to tremble. Evan recoiled. Gasps erupted across the pews. A baby cried. Someone whispered that the dog had lost his mind. But Rachel saw the truth in Chase's posture. This wasn't madness. This wasn't confusion. It was certainty. Her certainty, however, was cracking. The church walls felt too close, the aisle too narrow. Her heartbeat pulsed through her ears as she watched, Evan's expression shift from surprise to irritation. He hadn't expected to be challenged. Not by a dog. Not today. Rachel stepped back, only a few inches, but enough for Chase to notice. He immediately pivoted with her, keeping their bodies aligned, keeping himself between her and the two men at the altar. Her father tried to approach, worry painting his face. "What's going on?" Chase snapped his head toward him briefly but didn't move. His focus stayed fixed on Evan and Ryan, a soldier watching an enemy line. Rachel pressed a shaking hand to her forehead. Her vision blurred again. Another memory surfaced without warning. 2 weeks ago. Chase lying by the kitchen door, staring through the window with an intensity she thought was odd. Evan had been outside on the phone, pacing by his truck. When he came in, Chase stood between them and let out a single, low bark. Just one. Enough to make Evan pause. Evan laughed it off at the time, but he went to wash his hands before touching her. She remembered the smell of something sharp when he passed by her, the way he rubbed his palms as if trying to get rid of something. Her breath caught. Chase had reacted to it then. He was reacting to it now. Evan stepped closer again, forcing calm into his voice. "Rachel, we need to start. The guests are waiting." Chase growled. Rachel's pulse hammered. Then something happened so fast she didn't realize it until the guests gasped again. Ryan Cooper moved. It was subtle, a shift of his jacket, a small reach inside. Chase lunged 3 steps forward, barking so violently the sound cracked through the chapel. Ryan froze, his hand stilled inside the jacket. Evan spun back to him sharply. What are you doing?" Ryan didn't answer. Rachel's fear solidified into something colder. Her gaze flicked between them. The tension between Evan and Ryan wasn't nerves. It wasn't stress. It was fear. It was pressure. It was something hidden between them that didn't belong in a church. Chase sensed all of it. Rachel whispered, voice thin. Chase has never been wrong. Not once. Her father touched her shoulder gently. "Honey, maybe you should wait outside for a moment." But Rachel shook her head. "No, something is off." She looked down at Chase, his ears back, eyes sharp, body locked. He was bracing for something she could not yet see. She took one more step back, and Chase, without looking away from the men at the altar, moved with her, protecting her with every breath he took. The chapel had barely settled from the earlier chaos when the organ resumed, shaky and uneven, as though even the musician sensed the tension crawling through the air. Guests rose slowly, whispering nervously, eyes darting towards the entrance where Chase stood rigid beside Rachel. Every step she took down the aisle made his hackles rise higher. Rachel tried again to soothe him. "Chase, it's okay. I'm right here." But he didn't blink, didn't soften. His gaze tracked Evan like a laser, every muscle in his body coiled. Halfway down the aisle, the moment she tried to move past him, Chase exploded into motion. He lunged. The sound was so sudden and violent that the entire congregation gasped as one. His paws hit the marble, claws scraping, his bark echoing off the vaulted ceiling like a warning shot. He barreled straight at Evan. Evan stumbled backward, eyes wide, tripping over the step leading to the altar. His arms flailed, and his face twisted into something Rachel had never seen before. Fear. Pure, unfiltered fear. Chase didn't go for his leg or his arm. He went for Evan's jacket. His jaws locked onto the right pocket, teeth tearing through fabric in a single savage yank. A sharp rip filled the room. Evan screamed, shoving at the dog, but Chase only jerked harder, dragging him half off balance. Something small and solid tumbled from the torn pocket, hit the marble floor, and rolled toward the front pew. A vial, glass, clear, sealed. It wobbled twice before settling under the sunlight pouring through the rose window. The whispers began instantly. "What is that? Did he bring something to the wedding? Is that medicine?" Evan's face drained of color. He lunged forward, but Chase stepped in front of the vial, planting himself between it and Evan, growling so deep the floor seemed to vibrate. Rachel's breath punched from her lungs. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her bouquet slipped from her hand, petals scattering across the aisle like the last remnants of a dream. Evan held up both hands, voice cracking. "Rachel, it's not what it looks like." But everyone could see exactly what it looked like. The pastor descended from the altar, confusion and concern etched across his face. He bent down toward the vial, hesitating as if expecting it to explode. Chase barked sharply, warning him off. Not an attack, a command to be careful. Rachel finally forced herself forward, knees trembling. "What is it, Evan? Why did Chase smell it on you this morning?" Evan shook his head violently. "It's nothing dangerous. It's just something for anxiety, I swear." But his voice was wrong. Quivering. Too fast. The pastor lifted the vial closer to the light. A faint yellow tint shimmered inside. His brow furrowed. "This doesn't look like any medication I've seen, and it doesn't smell like one either." He recoiled slightly. His eyes widened. "This is a chemical irritant. Strong. Possibly even restricted." A stunned murmur rolled through the pews. Someone covered her mouth. A man whispered that his brother worked in emergency response and that these compounds were illegal to carry without authorization. Evan's mask cracked completely. He stepped toward Rachel, shaking his head. "You don't understand. I wasn't going to hurt you." Chase moved instantly, placing himself between them with such force he nearly knocked Rachel backward. His bark blasted through the chapel, so fierce it silenced every voice. Rachel pressed both hands to her chest. Her heartbeat thrashed against her ribs. "Evan, why did you have that? Why bring it here? Why hide it from me?" Evan swallowed hard. Sweat slicked his hairline. He looked trapped, cornered. "I needed time, that's all, just a way to pause the ceremony." I wasn't thinking clearly. I panicked. "Time for what?" Rachel whispered. Evan looked down. His silence was louder than any confession. Ryan stepped forward then, his voice tight. "Maybe we should all calm down." Chase spun, growling at him, teeth bared. Ryan froze in place. Rachel's gaze flicked between them. A truth she didn't want to see crept into her mind, chilling and undeniable. There was something the two men shared, something Chase had sensed from the moment they walked into the church. Evan reached out one trembling hand. "Rachel, please. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was just trying to keep everything from falling apart." Her breaths came shallow and fast. She stared at the emblem on the vial. No label, no prescription code. Nothing. Just danger. She met Chase's eyes then. He held her gaze with calm certainty, as if saying, "This is the truth. This is what I've been trying to protect you from." Her chest cracked with heartbreak. Chase had never been wrong, and today his instincts had just saved her again. Red and blue lights bled through the stained glass windows, flashing across the pews as two uniformed officers stepped into the chapel. The crowd parted immediately, relief and fear mixing in a thick, uneasy silence. Evan stood frozen beside the altar, sweat running down his temples, his torn suit pocket hanging open like a wound. Chase remained in front of Rachel, unmoving, his eyes locked on Evan with unwavering vigilance. One officer approached the pastor. "We received a call about a suspicious substance." "Where is it?" The pastor lifted the vial carefully. "Over here. It appears to be a restricted chemical irritant. The dog exposed it." The officer raised an eyebrow. "The dog?" Chase gave a single bark, sharp and authoritative, as if confirming his role. Evan finally broke. His shoulders sagged, his voice cracked. "It wasn't meant to hurt anyone. It was just supposed to knock me out for a few minutes, enough to delay signing the prenup." Rachel flinched. "Prenup?" she whispered. Her voice trembled. Evan nodded miserably. "I'm drowning in debt, Rachel. Ryan has been breathing down my neck for months. He said if I didn't pay him back, he would make everything blow up. I didn't know what else to do." The officer stepped closer. "You were going to fake a medical emergency during your own wedding?" Evan swallowed hard. "I panicked. I thought if the wedding paused, I'd have time to fix everything before you found out." He shook his head weakly. "It was stupid. I know that now." A soft murmur moved through the guests. Some shook their heads. Others stared at him with disbelief. Rachel felt the room tilt. She barely heard the officer begin reading Evan his rights. She barely registered Evan's pleading voice as he was guided toward the back of the church. But Chase wasn't watching Evan anymore. His ears suddenly pricked. His head snapped to the side aisle. Rachel followed his gaze. Ryan Cooper had stepped through the side entrance, dusting off his suit sleeve, as though he'd just jogged there. His expression was grave, strained, almost heroic. "Rachel, come on," he said urgently, reaching for her arm. "You shouldn't be in here. Let's get you somewhere safe." Chase lunged before he touched her. Ryan jerked back, startled. "Jesus, what's wrong with that dog?" Chase growled deeper than before. Not at Evan, not at the officers, at Ryan. Rachel's blood chilled. She had seen Chase angry, protective, alert. But this was different. His body lowered like he was tracking prey. His nose lifted, sniffing the air with sharp, deliberate pulls. Then Chase's eyes narrowed, fixed on Ryan with absolute certainty. The same eerie chemical tang hit Rachel's nose a moment later. She didn't understand it, didn't have the trained instincts, but she recognized the shift in Chase. He'd caught the same scent. Ryan's smile faltered. "Rachel, don't look at me like that. I'm trying to help you." The officer escorting Evan paused. "Sir, do you know this man?" Evan's voice cracked. "Ryan, don't, please." Ryan glared at him. "Shut up!" Chase barked, louder than ever, pushing Rachel back with his body. His teeth flashed. Ryan snapped, his voice rising, suddenly unhinged. "That dog needs to be put down. He's dangerous." Rachel backed away slowly. "Chase isn't wrong. He never has been. What did you do?" Ryan's jaw clenched. He took a step forward. Then another. His hand slipped toward the inside of his jacket. The officer shouted, "Sir, keep your hands where we can see them." Chase growled again, stepping in front of Rachel until his chest pressed against her knees. And then the truth clicked. Rachel whispered it aloud, incredulous. The same scent. On Evan, on the vial, on the side entrance, and on you. Ryan froze. Evan squeezed his eyes shut as if bracing for impact. "He made me do it, Rachel. I swear. He was the one who brought the stuff. He planned everything." The room erupted with gasps. Ryan's face hardened. His voice dropped to a cold whisper. "You were never supposed to figure it out." The officers moved instantly, surrounding him. Ryan tried to shove past them, but Chase launched forward, cutting off his escape with a bark so fierce it stunned the entire chapel. Guests scattered. An officer grabbed Ryan by both arms. Another seized the small, unmarked vial hidden inside his jacket. Identical to Evan's. Identical scent. Identical plan. Rachel covered her mouth, trembling. It wasn't Evan's idea. It had never been. Ryan had orchestrated everything, used Evan's fear, manipulated him, threatened him, and planned to use the wedding to force control over their finances. Chase had known the truth before any human could see the cracks. Ryan struggled as the officers cuffed him. "You don't understand. This was supposed to fix everything." But no one heard him now. Chase stood tall in the center aisle, chest heaving, eyes fierce, his entire posture radiating a single, undeniable truth. He had protected her. He had exposed them both. He had been right from the very beginning. For the first time since the ceremony had begun, the chapel fell completely silent. Not tense, not panicked, just stunned, as if everyone inside finally understood the scale of what had almost happened. Ryan was pinned against the far wall by two officers, his wrists locked in cuffs. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, the smugness gone from his face. He looked nothing like the confident groomsman who had walked in minutes earlier. His voice shook with rage and desperation as he spat out fragments of excuses that no longer mattered. Evan stood a few feet away, hands cuffed in front of him, shoulders hunched as though the weight of his choices had finally crushed what little pride he had left. The earlier panic had drained from his eyes, replaced by something hollow. Regret, shame, and a grief he had created on his own. The officers questioned them separately. Their voices echoed off the stained glass windows. Who supplied the chemical? Who planned the delay? Who entered through the side door first? Why was Rachel involved at all? Evan cracked almost instantly. He didn't fight, didn't argue. He simply lowered his head and spoke quietly. "It was Ryan. He brought the substance. He threatened me. He told me if I didn't stall the wedding, he'd use something worse. I didn't know what to do. I was stupid enough to trust him and too weak to tell Rachel the truth." The words scraped across the chapel like broken glass. Rachel stood frozen near the first row of pews, her breath shallow, her fingers trembling where they clutched the back of a chair. Chase pressed against her legs, grounding her. The officer questioning Evan nodded grimly. "Sit down. We'll continue this at the station." Ryan scoffed. "He's lying. You think this mutt figured anything out?" He gestured aggressively toward Chase. "That dog's been ruining everything from the start." Chase stepped forward, standing tall, gaze fixed on Ryan. No growl this time, just calm certainty. A silent verdict. One of the officers glanced down at him. "Honestly, if it weren't for this dog, we might have walked into something far worse." The pastor spoke next, his voice steadying the room. "You used this chapel, your guests, and this woman as pawns. Justice will sort out the rest, but what happened today could have ended in tragedy. Thanks to that dog, we're all standing here unharmed." Guests murmured in agreement. A few even clapped softly. Several stood and moved instinctively closer to Rachel, as if to form a quiet circle of protection around her. The officer turned to Rachel. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" She shook her head gently. "No, just give me a moment." The officer nodded and stepped aside. Rachel sank onto a pew, her dress flowing around her like a collapsed cloud. She pressed both palms against her forehead, trying to steady her breathing. The tears she'd been holding back finally slipped free, warm and uncontrollable. Chase climbed onto the pew beside her without hesitation, sitting so close their shoulders touched. He rested his head gently on her knee. Everything inside her cracked. She buried her fingers in his fur, letting the steady rise and fall of his breath anchor her back into reality. "Chase," she whispered, voice breaking. "You saved me." Again. He nudged her hand softly, as if telling her he would always do it. Her mother hurried down the aisle then, eyes wet, voice trembling. "Rachel, honey, are you hurt? Are you scared?" Rachel shook her head slowly. "I'm okay now. I'm okay because of him." Mrs. Monroe looked down at Chase with new understanding. Then at the torn suit, the scattered guests, the officers leading Ryan and Evan out the door. Her expression hardened. "You were saved from a life with someone who never deserved you." The words hit deep, true, final. Guests began to leave, grateful the chaos was over. Some stopped to pet Chase, whispering things like, "Good boy. You knew. You're a hero." He accepted every touch with patience, but never once moved from Rachel's side. Minutes passed before the chapel finally emptied, leaving only Rachel, her mother, the pastor, and Chase sitting in the soft hush of leftover candlelight. The pastor approached gently. "Rachel, weddings are meant to start new lives, but sometimes God gives us a different kind of beginning, one that protects us before we even know we need protecting." She nodded, tears sliding silently. "I thought this day was ruined, but maybe it was saved." "Your dog didn't ruin anything," he said kindly. "He revealed the truth, and the truth will always protect you more than a promise made in fear." Rachel looked down at Chase. He gazed back up at her with calm, steady eyes. Not proud, not anxious, just loyal, purely loyal. She exhaled shakily. "I almost walked into something I couldn't walk back out of, and he saw it before I did." Chase wagged his tail once, a soft thump on the wooden pew. Her mother squeezed her shoulder gently. "Losing this wedding isn't a loss, it's freedom, a clean slate." Rachel laughed softly through her tears, a sound half broken, half relieved. "I guess I owe my life to a dog." The pastor smiled. "Many of us do. You just happen to have one brave enough to stop a wedding." Rachel wiped her face, inhaled deeply, and finally stood. Her gown rustled as Chase rose with her, matching her step for step. She looked up at the sunlight through the stained glass. Her future wasn't shattered, it had been rescued. Chase leaned against her leg as they walked toward the exit. She paused at the threshold, glancing back once at the aisle she never finished walking down. She whispered to herself, "It wasn't the day I planned, but it might be the day that saved me." And with Chase leading the way, she stepped out of St. Helena's Chapel into the cool Vermont air, no longer a bride abandoned by chaos, but a woman freed by truth. Winter melted into early spring before Rachel realized how much her life had changed. What had once felt like a collapsed future had quietly reshaped itself into something steadier, calmer, and far more honest than anything she had planned on her wedding day. The small rental cabin she moved into sat at the edge of Maple Ridge, perched above a slow-moving river that reflected the sky like a quiet mirror. Every morning she woke to the sound of water drifting past and the rhythmic breathing of Chase sleeping near her bedroom door. He never strayed far from her, not even for a moment. If she walked into another room, he followed. If she cried unexpectedly, he rested his head in her lap before she could wipe the tears away. 3 months had passed since St. Helena's Chapel, but the town hadn't forgotten what he did. Neither had she. Rachel now volunteered full-time with Green Trail Animal Rescue, a small organization in the heart of Vermont that rehabilitated stray dogs, injured wildlife, and retired working canines. She found comfort in the routine: early feeds, walking dogs through dew-covered fields, the earthy scent of hay and cedar, the simple truth that animals didn't pretend. They didn't lie. They showed the world exactly who they were, moment by moment. Chase thrived there too. He had been invited to join a therapy program for veterans coping with PTSD, hosted at the rescue center twice a week. Rachel had been unsure at first. Chase had survived so much with her already. Would this be too much for him? But the first day she saw him walk toward a group of veterans sitting in a circle, his steps slow and steady, something inside her eased. He approached a man named Joel first, a Marine with deep-set eyes and hands that trembled slightly even when resting on his knees. Chase sat in front of him without instruction, leaned forward, and pressed his forehead gently to Joel's chest. The man's breath hitched. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half break, and placed both hands on Chase's back. No words were needed. Healing had its own language. By the end of the session, 3 veterans had asked when Chase would return. One woman quietly admitted she hadn't slept a full night in months, until Chase curled up beside her feet for a few minutes. Rachel watched from across the field, her heart lifting in ways she didn't expect. Chase wasn't just her protector anymore. He was becoming someone else's anchor, too. One afternoon in early May, the program held a small ceremony at the rescue barn. Sunlight filtered through wooden slats, dust motes floating like gold, as a therapist spoke about resilience, trauma, and unexpected guardians. When Chase received a small leather tag stamped with the words, "Ahor Paw's Therapy Partner," several veterans stood to applaud him. Rachel wiped her eyes discreetly. He deserved it, every bit of it. A few days later, Pastor Whitaker from St. Helena's Chapel called. He asked if Rachel and Chase could stop by. She hesitated, unsure if she wanted to walk back into that building. But something nudged her toward closure. When they arrived, the pastor led them quietly down the center aisle. Golden afternoon light filtered through the same stained glass windows that had witnessed her heart break. Her breath caught, but this time the memories didn't crush her. They felt distant, like they belonged to a version of herself she'd already outgrown. At the far end of the chapel, above the small wooden bulletin board, hung a framed photo. Chase, standing in front of the chapel doors, his ears high, posture strong, amber eyes sharp and heroic. Below it, a small brass plaque read, "Chase the Guardian Who Saw the Truth." Rachel's throat tightened. She looked down at him. Chase sat calmly by her leg, gazing up at the picture without a sound, as if he understood the honor but didn't need the recognition. He had never chased attention, only truth. Pastor Whitaker folded his hands. We wanted to remind people that courage doesn't always look like a soldier or a saint. Sometimes it looks like a dog who refuses to move. Rachel inhaled slowly. Thank you. He saved all of us that day. The pastor smiled gently. And he continues to save. Outside, a warm breeze rustled through the maple trees. Rachel sat on the chapel steps for a long moment, watching Chase sniff the grass, tail relaxed, posture peaceful. Life had carved out new space for both of them, a quieter path, but not an empty one. Some nights she still woke from dreams that left her heart racing. She'd see Evan's pale face, the vial rolling across the marble floor, the way her life had almost twisted into something dark. But then she would feel the weight of Chase jumping onto her bed, gently laying beside her, his presence grounding her back into the present. They had each been broken in different ways, but side by side they were learning how to mend. Rachel started hiking again on weekends, letting Chase lead through the forest trails. He always glanced back every few minutes as if checking that she was really okay. And she was. Slowly, steadily, truthfully. One evening, after returning from a session with the veterans, Rachel knelt beside him on the cabin's front porch. Fireflies blinked across the yard, tiny sparks of light drifting above the grass. "You didn't just save me that day," she whispered. "You gave me back a life I didn't know I'd lost. A safer one. A truer one." Chase nudged her chin with his nose and lay down beside her, head resting gently on her lap. The world outside was finally quiet. No chaos, no lies, just the steady pulse of a dog who had already rewritten the trajectory of her life. And in that silence, Rachel finally realized something. What she once thought was the end of her story was only the beginning. The first snow of December drifted lightly over Maple Ridge, soft as ash, settling on cedar branches and rooftops like a blessing. Rachel stood outside the rescue center with Chase at her side, both of them watching the white morning slowly swallow the valley. The quiet still felt new, as if life was finally breathing at a gentler pace. That peace was interrupted by the crunch of footsteps across the gravel. A young woman approached, bundled in a thick navy coat, a camera bag slung over her shoulder. She looked barely 23, cheeks flushed from the cold, eyes bright with purpose. "Hi, Ms. Monroe. I'm Lily Harper, from North Vermont Media." Rachel blinked. The name sounded familiar. "You emailed me, right? About the documentary?" Lily nodded eagerly, brushing snowflakes from her lens cap. "Yes, we're doing a series on real-life community heroes, veterans, first responders, and, well, dogs. A lot of dogs." She smiled, shy but sincere. "Everyone told me I had to come meet Chase." At the sound of his name, Chase stepped forward, ears pricked, tail giving one slow, dignified wag. Lily laughed softly. "He's even more handsome in person." Rachel placed a hand gently on Chase's back. "He's modest, but he'll accept the compliment." They walked into the barn's side office, where wood walls smelled of hay and pine, and Chase settled by Rachel's feet like he'd lived there his whole life. Lily set up her small camera on a tripod, her nervous excitement almost endearing. "Before we start," she said, "is there anything off-limits? Any details you'd rather keep private?" Rachel hesitated, fingers trailing along the edge of her mug. She knew the story had already spread far beyond Vermont, but there was something different about telling it out loud again. "No. I think the truth deserves to be heard. If Chase taught me anything, it's that leaving things unsaid can be dangerous." Lily nodded, then rolled the camera. Rachel took a small breath, letting memory unfurl slowly. Chase wasn't always trained for rescue work. He wasn't brought up in a program. He was just a good soul who listened better than most people do. She ran her hand along his fur. Long before the wedding, he warned me about little things. A gas leak in my old apartment during college. A man who followed me back to my dorm once. He's always been able to sense things I couldn't. Lily adjusted the audio. So when he stopped you at the church doors, you trusted him? Rachel smiled sadly. I wanted to, but I was blinded by what I thought my life was supposed to look like. He wasn't wrong. He just saw the truth before I did. Chase lifted his head, amber eyes meeting hers, quiet and steady. Rachel's voice softened. People say that dogs can't speak, but that's not true. They talk constantly. We just choose not to listen. Chase tried to tell me long before that day. I ignored him until I couldn't anymore. Lily glanced down at her notes. Some people in town say Chase changed Vermont, that he made people more aware. Rachel laughed gently. I don't know if he changed the whole state, but he changed this community. And me? The interview continued through the morning, shifting from the wedding to the therapy program, to the veterans who now relied on Chase's steady presence. Lily listened intently, occasionally wiping her eyes when Rachel described the moment Chase pressed his head into Joel's chest at that first session. After recording, they walked outside to film B-roll footage. The town square looked like a postcard. Snowy sidewalks, holiday wreaths, the faint sound of church bells. As they passed the bulletin board near the general store, Lily stopped abruptly. Is that him? There, framed under glass, was the same photo Pastor Whitaker had hung in St. Helena's. Chase, standing tall in front of the chapel doors. Someone had added a small banner beneath it. Thank you, Chase. Vermont's guardian. Cars passing by honked lightly in greeting. A child tugged her mother's sleeve and pointed. Look, Mom, that's the dog who saved the bride. Rachel felt warmth rise in her chest. It wasn't pride, it wasn't nostalgia, it was gratitude. Lily raised her camera. Can I get a shot of you two in front of it? Rachel nodded, kneeling beside Chase as the snow continued to fall around them. Chase stood regal and calm, tail gently swaying, his breath puffing in soft clouds. Lily clicked several photos, then paused. People are going to love this story. But more than that, they're going to feel it. Rachel brushed a hand through Chase's fur. He didn't just save my life. He taught me something I didn't know I needed. Trust doesn't come from words. It comes from instinct, from listening to what someone shows you, not what they say. Chase leaned gently against her leg. And he taught me that sometimes the quietest warnings are the ones that matter most. They walked Lily back to her car, exchanging goodbyes and promises to meet again once the documentary aired. The moment her car pulled away, silence settled back over the snowy street. Rachel breathed it in, letting the cold and calm seep into her bones. At her side, Chase sat tall, watching the world with the patience of someone who'd already lived a lifetime of truth. You're more than a hero, she whispered. You're a reminder. Chase nudged her hand, warm and steady in the winter air. Rachel smiled. His legacy wasn't about stopping a wedding. It was about teaching an entire town why listening, really listening, could save a life. And in Vermont, Chase was no longer just a dog. He was a symbol, a teacher, a guardian whose story would be passed on for generations. The early summer sun spread a warm glow across the hillside outside Maple Ridge, turning the Vermont pines a rich emerald. Rows of folding. Chairs curved around a small wooden stage, where a hand-painted banner fluttered softly in the breeze. Chase Guardian Program, Early Instinct Canine Training Initiative. Local families, veterans, rescue handlers, and reporters gathered. their voices low with anticipation. The air carried the scent of pine sap and river mist. On the stage, cameras and microphones waited, and beside Rachel Monroe, standing tall and calm as ever, was Chase. His coat gleamed in the sun. His posture was steady. Every movement was deliberate, as though he knew this moment belonged partly to him. Rachel smoothed the front of her blouse, feeling her heartbeat climb. She glanced down. Chase looked up at her with that same grounding presence that had carried her through the darkest moment of her life. The moment he refused to let her walk into a future built on lies. She touched the top of his head gently. "Ready?" He blinked once. It was enough. The mayor stepped aside. The crowd quieted. Rachel walked to the microphone. She exhaled slowly, letting the hush settle. "Thank you all for being here today," she began. Her voice was steady, but soft with emotion. "This program is built on one simple truth. Sometimes the earliest warning doesn't come from a voice, but from instinct, from a companion who sees danger before we do." She paused, glancing at Chase. He sat at her heel, alert yet relaxed, watching the crowd with calm authority. "A year ago today," she continued, "I was standing at the doors of St. Helena's Chapel, ready to walk into a life I thought I understood. And Chase wouldn't let me." He stopped. He pushed back. He refused to move. People shifted in their seats, leaning in. A few already knew the story, but hearing it from her carried weight. I thought he was being difficult. I thought he was ruining everything. But what he was really doing was saving me. Her voice tightened briefly, but she steadied it. He sensed something I couldn't, something no one else could. And because of that, I'm standing here today. Safe, healed, and able to start something that will help others. People, families, veterans, and other dogs who have that same gift. A reporter raised a hand. One Rachel recognized. Same young journalist from the documentary, carrying a notepad and bright determination. "Rachel, one question. Why did you keep Chase with you through everything? After the wedding, after the heartbreak, after the scandal? Why stay so close?" The crowd turned expectantly. Rachel looked down at Chase. Her hand moved instinctively to his back. His ears twitched, as if he felt the shift in her heartbeat. "Because he didn't just stop the wedding," she said softly. "He stopped me from losing myself. He stopped me from stepping into a life built on fear and pretended stability. And somehow, he saved me too." A collective breath swept through the audience. She lifted her eyes to the camera trained on her. "So I'll ask all of you this. What's your story with a loyal pet?" The moment lingered in the air, a quiet invitation carried by the wind. Applause rose around her. Some clapped slowly, moved, others wiped at their eyes. Veterans in the front row nodded, understanding the silent language of trauma and healing better than most. Behind her, Chase stood, chest rising and falling with calm certainty. His gaze shifted toward the pines bordering the property. The forest swayed gently as if acknowledging him, as if calling him back into the world where instincts are pure and truth has no words. Rachel knelt beside him, pulling him close. "Today isn't the end, boy," she murmured. "It's the beginning of something bigger." His tail thumped once, slow and deliberate. Camera crews moved in to capture footage. Children asked if they could pet him. A veteran placed a hand on Chase's shoulder with quiet gratitude. The world seemed to orbit around him, each person touched not by a dramatic rescue or viral headline, but by the simple, unwavering presence of a dog who refused to let a life go wrong. As the event drew to a close, Rachel led Chase toward the overlook, where the valley stretched endlessly. Gold sunlight dripped over the ridgelines. The river shimmered like a silver ribbon. She rested a hand on Chase's neck. "You didn't just rewrite my life, Chase," she whispered. "You made sure I'd live it honestly." He lifted his head, scanning the horizon, listening to something only he understood. His journey wasn't finished. Not even close. When the final camera shut off and guests began to leave, Rachel turned back toward the viewer. The unseen audience beyond the screen, the people who found healing in the stories of dogs like Chase. "If his story moved you," she said, "then don't forget to like, share, and support the German Shepherd community. Every voice helps us continue telling the stories of these silent heroes, the ones who walk beside us, see the truth before we do, and protect us in ways we may never fully understand." The wind carried her words across the ridge. Chase stepped forward, standing tall in the fading light, watching, guarding, listening, as if ready for whatever truth waited in the trees beyond.